Let's see. Oh, very nice. I see your navy curtains and your pillow. Is that what that round thing is? With the button?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, you've got your hair combed and everything. Look at that, right?
Well, I comb my hair.
I know, but it just looks different. It looks like this cool guy back.
A little further back now. I'm a little further out.
Yeah, should I do that too? Should we match, kind of?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
I just want to make sure the little, noticing it's a little off balance. I just want to make sure it's. There we go.
Yeah, I wish I could get. I know.
Okay.
I wish.
Let's. I sound good, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that pillow is distracting. I would. Yes.
What?
I think your pillow. You're sharing your pillow. Yeah. If you're going to have your pillow in, I think you should have the whole thing in. I think it needs to come 2 inches closer to you. Yeah. Okay.
This was on the chair in the other room, but I needed some more things to give dimension to the setting here. But you can.
I see that. Oh, wow.
Very sunny day today. Very
yes.
Sunny. The pattern. The funny thing is, this is like the 5th pair of curtains I purchased, because you can never see what they're really like until you get them.
I know.
Right, and then they're actually backwards, because there's a pattern on them that's so bad. It looked fine. It looked very fine. It looked fine on the photos, but when I got them, it looked very garish. So I literally just put the curtains facing outside.
Do they come with rings? So you just have to keep switching them all the time? It's not a big deal.
What?
They're all pre-made, and you can just put them on rings and switch them easily. You don't have to do anything but hang them.
They've got
little rings.
Yeah, there's a word for where you have holes in them already for the rod.
Yeah,
they come out. It takes
grommets.
So it just takes like a second to put them on, and then I just reversed it. I said, let me just use them this way until I can one day get the perfect set of curtains. And so, but this looks all right.
You know, in this, I don't know if I sent you all. I don't know why I would have sent you the link. It's one of the things I tweeted. We weren't in it, but it was the 3 little interviews on Spin 1038 or something like that. And Amanda Seyfried, I'm pretty sure it was she and not Lily Collins, was in front of this very floral wallpaper, I think. And it was gorgeous. And she had this little lace dress on. I'm sure it was staged. I mean, she looked perfect and adorable. It was a very busy background, but it worked for her. You know, she was just the right proportion of person to background and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I suppose busy can be done. You just have to know what you're doing.
Right. Well, I wouldn't mind a little bit of a pattern, but it's okay. It looks fine. Navy blue.
I feel like
mine's a little bit.
Mine's messy, but I keep trying to straighten the books, and I think it's very distracting.
No, it's perfect.
Well, I mean, I think it'd be better if it were perfectly horizontal, but it has to do with, you know, what you do with this. So whatever.
No, I don't think so.
No? All right, wait a minute.
I like the way it looks.
What have I got sticking out? Okay, wait a minute.
Okay.
There, is that better?
What's on your shirt there?
Should I take that off? It was a pin. It's Bakelite. It was Deirdre's. I took it.
No, leave it.
Okay.
No, it's a dear friend of yours, so leave it. All right. Well, let's start in earnest then.
Okay. You can edit, right?
No, this is going out live on YouTube right now.
I don't believe.
Okay, you know what? I'm kidding now. You know what? I'm kidding. It's sad. I used to be able to trick you and tease you, but I can't do it because you're too wise now.
No, I think you can still trick me and tease me. It'll still.
Okay. I mean, it's just a flip of a button or one click. I can make this go on YouTube. That's the funny part, because it has the option to stream it live. But I probably will just edit. Yeah, I might edit the curtain part out. We'll see.
Oh,
sometimes I leave stuff like that in because I feel like that's what people like to hear. People like to hear about the mundane.
Yes. We can deliver that, I'm sure.
The banalities of.
Yes.
people in the world of the arts.
Yes.
Um, so I was telling somebody, oh, my friend came up to visit, the one whose camp counselor is my another client of mine, and but I was trying to I was trying to recall like our origin story, and I had to kind of keep digging in and till my synapses were working. We're all working in working order, and I was remembering, kind of kept going back in time, because the first thing I was thinking of was that Marion approached me about doing something, but I realized no, we go back further than that, because I guess I must have seen a review or something about your book, The Brothers Mankiewicz, and so I reached out to the publisher, I guess, and emailed them and asked them if they could send me a copy of the book, and then set up an interview with you. And then coincidentally, our friend Andrea Shane, no, then you and I scheduled a podcast together. We put it on the books, and then Andrea, coincidentally, because she knew I was a film person, whenever she would get a film event, she would ask if I wanted to work it. This is like a freelance job. So I said, yeah, sure. I know I have something set up with Sydney. And I said, but don't tell her that I'm going to be at the event. But I guess it was in the paperwork or something, because you knew I was coming to that club, right? To the arts club, where you
Yes,
were doing it.
you were my first podcast to be
Well,
scheduled.
that's now, we haven't gone to there yet, but that was
Right,
about a week later.
right. But
Yeah.
it was scheduled, and then what happened was, for that event, which I think was my first in-person event, as it turned out, it was a very short season of in-person because of COVID. But when she sent me the paperwork, she said, the person there will be Adam Shartoff. And I wrote back, my Adam Shartoff? And we hadn't even met yet, but it was so nice, yes, to meet
Did she
you.
know did I had mentioned to Andrea that I was having you on the podcast when
I have no idea. How many, are there
I
many
wonder if
Adam
Andrea,
Shartoffs?
if it was a surprise to Andrea when you said my Adam Shartoff, or if she already knew we knew each other.
I don't know,
Anyway,
but that was so nice.
and then we did the podcast, which went off really well. I think you thought it was a good kind of way of working out how you were going to talk about I like doing that with people. Sometimes they're figuring out how they're going to talk about their project. In your case, it's a book. Sometimes when I have somebody on, it's their film,
Hmm.
and they haven't been coached, or like I might be one of the first people they talk to, so they're still kind of figuring out a way of speaking about their film, a language. But it's
Yes,
good because you get people that are speaking kind of from the the hip, or whatever the expression
I
might be.
think I was a virgin podcaster. I'm pretty sure yours was my first, and you came to my apartment, which was helpful. And no, I had been interviewed for other things, but but not specifically
Well,
on the book. And you were really helpful. And when I would say things, at one point I said something, and you came back and said, folks, it's really an interesting book, and it's not too long. I had said something that made it sound.
oh, you said something about the length of it.
Yeah, and so you had me so at ease, I forgot, oh yeah, I should be, making people want to buy this book.
Well, there's,
So you're really helpful.
well, the length of the book and a book being long are two different things. It's like when people say, if you're 85 years old, uh, you may not be elderly. You're an older person, but you're older, but you may not be elderly. I kind of, it's this frame of mind. So when I talk about a book's length, a book that is long is a book, it could be 25 pages.
Interminable. Like,
so,
how many pages till
in
the
other
end?
words,
When do I get through with this? Right.
if a book is really well written and you are fascinated by the subject, it's not long, it's lengthy. I know these are semantics, but I mean, to me, it's like longer the better in that way, in that regard, because um, it's a good read. So this book, if you are interested in, again, the golden age of Hollywood, these two brothers were there for the whole gamut, from the end of the talkies right to into kind of new Hollywood era. So they really were front and center. Always, they were like 1 degree from just about everybody in the business, and so it's worth reading
Thank you.
for that. Yeah. So then in our origin story, the last bit is just completely, um, what would you call it? Serendipitous, in the sense that a friend, colleague of mine, approached me because she's a publicist and didn't have a ton of film experience, although she did just do the Mike Nichols book. And I had done a podcast in her office with those guys, Ash and Sam, Ash Carter and Sam Kashner, and about the Mike Nichols book. And so
Which was
I was fresh on her mind. So when she got you as a client, she asked me to kind of come on board. And I think it turned out to be just the exactly the right choice, right, or the right decision, because I think we all really created something special, with the whole project.
Yes, it's been really fun. Obviously, our stars are aligned, Adam, because we keep
weaving.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and I just remember how the first thing, and we didn't have any part, this was already set up by yourself, but the whole TCM project, which was back in the spring at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic, when we were all stuck inside, terrified to even step outside to get the mail in the lobby, let alone go outdoors and do your errands.
I was so lucky because I flew. It was on TV at the end of March, but we taped it or filmed it or whatever they do in mid-February, and then the world shut down. So I don't know what they would have done, whether they would have shot us in 3 different places or something like that. But I'm very lucky on timing.
Yeah.
And and I had planned to have friends over each night, that it was on. Canceled all that, of course, and tweeted.
Well, we did
do the whole thing.
Right. Well, we did do a kind of an online version, an early quasi watch party, or a watch party. And yeah, we did Facebook and Twitter. So that was our first, I think really our first thing that we did.
Yes.
Right. And even though you set that up, so you spent the weekend on TC that weekend. It was the Brothers Mankiewicz, the family Mankiewicz weekend, right? And Mankiewicz family weekend, and because Ben, Herman's grandson, is one of the main hosts of the TCM, right. And so it was finally they were getting around to do an entire weekend which was kind of focusing on Mankiewicz movies that either of the brothers touched. And whether directed, produced, wrote, etc. And you and Alex Mankiewicz, who is the daughter of Joe Mankiewicz, and Ben, again the grandson of Herman, did all those intros and outros, which were terrific. And that was, I thought, wow, you really are. You're good. You're really competent and outspoken. Articulate on the subject. You are, and then you went on, again to do a number of other podcasts and appearances, and So what was really interesting was that you took this situation where you should have been out on a book tour, essentially, whatever that might have looked like, and had to rethink the whole thing because of the quarantine. But I think you did a really great job adapting.
Well, again, I just can't say how fortunate I was, because there are people whose books had to come out during this period. Mine came out months before that, who are doing research on their books, and the archives have shut down. So I don't know what if they have to stop in place. It's just so sad. And I was really lucky. And there's Zoom, or all these services. So it's been.
I'm hoping that
I
I'm
was going to
hoping a
say,
lot
as I
of
go through my date book, each week I'd open it and see something else scheduled that wasn't happening. And I didn't cross them out. I just decided anything new, I would put a little red square around to remember what I did do and didn't do. But yeah, all the in-person stuff shut down. And I was supposed to go to the TCM Film Festival, which I was really
oh
excited,
right,
because those are the
yeah, which
fans
is
who really know everything backwards and forwards. And it would be the event you and I were at, that audience knew the movies. I mean, it was really fun because we did clips from
the
some of the
book
movies,
that
and they
first
were
event where
so
we met.
knowledgeable and they had memories, and it was really fun. So I was that in particular, the TCM event was a disappointment, but we just moved on.
Yeah, the book event again is the book event I was freelancing working at, like a side gig of where I would work some author events, which is really just one of the components of, since I'm so invested in the film world, but then all of a sudden the publishing world or literary world, whatever, started to really sort of become a central part of my life. And now it's all encompassing too. So, which I welcome. I like the merging of books and film and podcasting a lot. But which leads me to also the connection I was able to leverage from our working together, which was, I saw that Ileana Douglas, the actor and author and podcaster, she had a podcast as a extension of her own memoir. I Blame Dennis Hopper. So she was doing this podcast, and I thought, she loved. I could see from watching it that she loved having authors on and talking film history. Her own grandfather, of course, was Melvin Douglas from the worked with the Mankiewiczes. And I just thought you would be perfect for that show. So, I reached out, and lucky, maybe it's not luck, it was a good fit. And so that was great because that just opened up a door for me to get Eliana on my show. And now there's some collaboration going on, with her. So it's all been such a great, series of circumstances. But yeah, you're doing that podcast, and which was also a YouTube show. I think was a great opportunity too.
Well, that's the
So
one where
you didn't
I
know you
I
were live. That was
I
live,
not
and you
only
didn't
didn't
know.
know I was live, I
You
didn't
didn't know
know
you're
it was
on
going to
video.
be video. I mean, it's like this, we're doing it, and there will be video, but there have been people who've interviewed me and they wanted the video in the interview, but it was just going to be audio. But I did
Yeah.
at least get dressed, which we can't all say we're doing all this time. And I said just before it started, "Is there video?" And they go, "Yeah." I went, "Oh, okay."
You're,
So I happily did the interview. And it wasn't till about 11 o'clock at night when I was shutting down my computer that did something. Oh, I know. I was shutting down Twitter and someone had tweeted about it. And I thought, "You saw it already?" That's when I found out it had been live. So, Adam, I still repeat what you've said about me, that I lead a charmed but clueless life. So that's an example.
no, did I really say that? That's not
Yes,
nice.
you did. I can't remember what it was in connection with, but it could have been that. I don't know.
I guess, better a charmed and clueless life than a clued in life that's charmless.
Yeah.
I always say
Or
the inverse.
jinxed and
Yeah,
something, you know.
yeah.
I'm like,
Anyway, it's been quite a great just sticking with. And the end game, the reason why normally I think we would have moved on in our own, much sooner, except that the game plan was to also, use the premiere of David Fincher's new movie Mank, which is now available for viewing on Netflix, finally as of this past weekend, to try to see if we could get more opportunities from the book's relationship to that film. And indeed, that does exist. And there's been just so much. You've been writing so many articles and tapped to sort of for your thoughts and perspective on the film and on fact versus fiction, etc. When it comes to this story, Herman's story. Um, a surprise. But maybe I shouldn't be surprised. Again, maybe, this is the way it's supposed to work.
Again, charmed. The timing was quite wonderful. I mean, I didn't know whether I knew he had the project in the works a few years into my work on the book, but I didn't know when it would come out. So it could have come out
Yeah.
years before my book came out or years after, but it came out now, and the book is still fresh enough. Well, I guess it would have always been fresh enough, but my point is, it's a good guide and it's a good background, and so I'm hoping people will get more interested in Herman and want to know more about the real Herman. And I can't wait to hear your reactions to the movie. We haven't talked about it.
Right. Well, you were so excited. You had gotten an opportunity through an invitation by the Mankiewicz family, right, to get a early
Netflix, from Netflix.
from the Netflix folks.
Yeah.
That wasn't
No,
was that not a result of their including you on the invitation, or
no, I think Netflix included critics and like friends and family sort of, and reached out to
I
me.
didn't get my invitation, but that's
No,
another.
I know.
That's
I told him.
um. Let's see. So yeah. So I certainly was waiting for bated breath. I think as it turns out, Gary Oldman, who is cast as Herman Mankiewicz, I was a little skeptical initially, but there's one of the great actors of our day. So
Well, I had heard a few years ago, I did see an early script, and I also saw another script sort of made it the rounds that is dated 1994, and I wrote a little about that for the wellsnet.com piece. There was a piece a few months ago about that script and conjecturing, how much the movie would be accurate, etc. But at the time, a few years ago, I heard it was going to be Tom Hanks as Herman. And I thought, well, that'll be great because he can capture the curmudgeonly nature of Herman and still make him endearing. So I think Tom Hanks could have been a valid Herman also, although Tom Hanks is even older than Gary Oldman, I think, right?
I'm not
Anyway,
sure of their ages, but I can say
right.
that I
Well,
think the difference is that Gary Oldman is much more of a character actor. I mean, he just got the Oscar, was it last year, for playing Winston Churchill.
a couple of years ago.
Whereas I think Tom Hanks, Hanks, it's Hanks
He's such
as
a big
something.
star. Yeah, he's a huge star. Well, Gary Oldman is 61, I think, and Herman in the movie is 43, but he only lived another 10 or 13 years, I guess, and he was not healthy. So in that way, it's it's sort of a valid physical depiction. Yes, I loved him in the role. I absolutely did. He does look a bit older than his wife, who's the same age. Sarah is also supposed to be 43. And Tuppence Middleton, I think, is 30 something, probably barely
She
30.
looks much younger than 43. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the movies, right? All three of the leads are sylph thin and gorgeous, and it's an American movie, and that's what the women are like in
Well, Gary Oldman is pudgy in the movie, so
Uh-huh. Yeah,
in
he's
that
in
regard,
contrast to everybody, and his gait is kind of rolling, and
right? He's very disheveled. Everybody else is put together.
yeah,
I mean, certainly some of those Hollywood, uh, the Hollywood producers and the Thalbergs and the mayors and the studio owners, and I mean everybody looks incredible.
yeah.
So from a design standpoint, the film looks fantastic.
Yes, I
And
think it's gorgeous.
resembles,
Yeah.
right, and sort of resembles, not coincidentally, the films, you know, certainly of the era. Wouldn't you say?
Yes. Yes. I never get to, I've watched it 4.5 times now. I've watched it a lot more. Well, I watched it twice on the weekend when we got it in advance. And then they gave it to me in advance again because I was going to write about it. And so my husband and I watched it. And then I was looking for a couple of quotes I wanted to put in a couple of pieces. So I watched the half, I went half through. And then the other night I rewatched it again. And I never get tired of watching it. Just like well, Citizen Kane, you can look at every frame and there's so much to see. So I never get tired of watching that either.
Yeah. So, but what did you? So, but I remember from you're watching it and you're, having written this book and spending so much time, especially with like in Herman's head, or he
Herman
was
was
in
in
your
my
head.
head. Right,
Well,
right,
he was
right,
in your head,
right. I was trying
but
to get in
like,
his head, and he lived in my head for all those
right.
years.
Yeah. So, and then to see it transpire and on the screen, to see it there and to done it, your feeling was that they honored him and they got him.
Yes, I did. I mean, I've seen footage of Joe. There's a lot of footage of Joe, mostly when he was older. So he's sort of
Right.
more deliberate and everything. And I think Tom Pelfrey, who plays Joe, did a lot of research. I know he used my book. He mentioned it several times, which endeared him to me. I think they all had a copy of the book, but he had footage of Joe to watch, and then I think used the book to think about what he was like when he was younger. For Herman, the only footage I may have seen was when I was doing research at the Academy. The Academy Library also has a film kind of unit, and they showed me some supposedly her own movies that supposedly had Herman in it, but I never could exactly spot Herman. But then at one point, Ben Mankiewicz told me that Herman's in the front page, the 1931 original movie of the front page. And he's about 3 minutes in or 5 minutes in or something like that. And he has lines. So you see his face and he says things. I've actually heard him speak. This is 1931, so he's about 33 years old. It's 10 years before he was supposed to be this. That's it for Herman. So we don't really know what he sounded like beyond this. But the Gary Oldman portrayal, I thought, was a very, as far as I know, authentic representation about how he would have seemed. And I just reached out to a couple of people who knew him as children, and they're in their 80s. And I want to ask what they think because I'm curious about his affect.
Who is it that version of the front page was? Who are the two? Who's like Hildy? Who
Well,
was it?
Ben, it was who does play him? Is it it's not Adolph Manjou, but I think he's in it. Ben Hecht and Charlie MacArthur wrote it, and they were good friends of Herman's. I think that's why he got to be in it, because he was their buddy.
And they all make their cameos in of course the in Mank.
Yes, yes. He put all those people in a room together, which they wouldn't have been writing at Paramount in that way, but it was fun. And they cast people, they cast really good actors who also looked like the real people. George S. Kaufman.
Take a minute because my teenager is microwaving something, so I just want to give it a second.
Yeah.
Till the noise.
Should we look up who was Hildy? Who was it?
I can do that real fast. I'm just curious because I'm pretty sure I thought I saw like all the versions over the years of the front page.
Yeah, I want to see Hildy Johnson. Oh, this is like.
But of course, there was variations on the title as well. Like it became My Gal Friday, and
Right, with Rosalind Russell. Right.
Well, that was a good one. I'm looking at the wrong one here. 1931. Yes, Adolph Manjou, Pat O'Brien.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I haven't seen that one. I need to see it
You
because
can watch
Herman's
it
in
on
it.
YouTube. You can get it. It's sort of.
Of course, Edward Everett Horton is in it. He's in everything.
I love him.
I think he was probably just beloved by most Hollywood directors because so many used him. I mean, they all seem to really always like. He was such a great comedian.
It's like Edna Mae Oliver, who Herman wrote a movie for. She's so much fun to watch with that long face. So he's sort of the male Edna Mae.
We'll have to wait a minute because just 2 years into the talkies too, right? It was this movie came out.
Well, no, they started theoretically in the fall of 1927 with,
The talkies.
Al Jolson. But it took a few years to gear up because the theaters didn't have the equipment.
Well, maybe maybe it was by 29 the right. By 29 the silence had ended.
I think they were still making things with subtitles even in 20. Is that right? Nothing after 29?
I don't remember. I was very young at the time. I don't.
Right, me too. Right. Let's see. I can actually look in their filmography and see the last title that anybody did. Yeah, I don't see any titles of Herman's in 1930. Let's see if Joe did any. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the last titles, at least in their filmography, were in movies that came out in 29. And then they were doing dialogue by 1930. So I guess everyone had made the transition by then.
Yeah.
Oh, we're still not really recording.
No, we are recording, but I'm not going to use it probably because it's too choppy. I'm not going to bother.
Okay.
Marion was email.
Marion, what? Go ahead.
Oh, she was emailing me about. She has all this, I guess, these videos of Natalie, her daughter, dancing and stuff. And so she wanted me to create a YouTube channel. But I'm like, how do I create a YouTube channel for somebody else? They have to have the login associated with their Google account. It's like, I guess I can. Maybe you don't really need a Google account to do it. It's owned by Google, YouTube, but.
Do you have
what's up? Just make your sandwich.
You have to pay for it? You pay for your YouTube channel?
No. Take a napkin.
Hi, Adam.
You mean Jacob?
Jacob. Why don't? Yeah, I have blocks on several people's names.
Good. That's quite a bagel, right? Yeah.
Fathers, and although when we had our first son, Corky, I called him David, which was my brother's name. When we had our second son, I called him Corky. We got our dog, I called him Toby. And, it's like last and first name. Right. Have you seen this? I don't know if I showed you all this.
No.
Not handsome?
So is that a vintage? No, I saw a barcode on the bottom. So that's a new one?
It's an ad.
And it's right. They put on that cover. It's supposed to be a retro looking ad on the front. So it looks like a variety from the 40s or something.
Yes, even with like wrinkles and
browning.
Tears, it's very cool.
Oh wow, that's what a gift to you.
This was here's the back. This was
great.
The issue that had the piece about how Variety covered Citizen Kane. That was in there, and he and I were corresponding on Twitter, so he sent me a couple of issues.
It's much harder to get your hands on a copy of Variety in the Hudson Valley.
It's hard here. He sent them to me from LA.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't even get the Publishers Weekly piece that I wrote. In fact, I wrote the editor, could you send me a tear sheet? And he's never even responded. It's disappointing.
Jeez.
Don't record that. Don't use them.
That's on there, baby. That's too late. All right. Well, let's go back. I mean, that was, I like seeing that. So why don't we start?
Okay.
From showing that. All right. So just for one thing, the front page we looked up, it was Adolphe Menjou and Pat O'Brien. Pat O'Brien played Hildy Johnson. Quite a contrast. I mean, from later casted versions of the same film, right? Where they just got larger and larger than life.
Right. Well, in this one, they're looking, where's Hildy? Where's Hildy? And so Herman, they have a little shot of opening a speakeasy door, and
Right.
there's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where's Hildy?
I know.
So
I want
she's
to
not
watch
here.
that.
She's
Yeah.
on the wagon. And then Herman go knock knock and he goes, well, I ain't. So it was very good lines for Herman to say. So that was his movie
Show.
career, as far as I know. His lines anyway. Oh no,
Yeah.
that's not
Well,
true.
show the show. Yeah, show the variety, the that they put this ad on the front, which is a retro cover. It looks like a variety from the maybe 50, 60 years ago,
Right.
easily
See,
70, 80
this
years ago.
is
Yeah,
faux. It's really pretty.
right,
And then
right.
there's a real
Amazing. How does it feel? I mean, it must feel very odd. There's Gary Oldman, David Fincher.
right.
How does it must feel very, very odd though, to when because even through the publishing and after the publishing of this, I don't know at what point you knew that they were making a Mank movie, but um,
Well,
for it
I
to
heard
become
it
part of
a
the
few years in. I mean,
yeah,
it embarrasses me that it took me so long to write this book, but a few years in, I heard that David Fincher wants to make a movie about Herman Mankiewicz, and that's kind of all I knew. So it was
because
this
his
thing out
dad
there
had
that I,
written a screenplay, but his
right,
dad, Jack Fincher, his late father, had written the screenplay about Herman Mankiewicz when he was a younger man, way back, and it was always David Fincher's desire to finally get it made into a movie. So the timing that this movie should come, and the movie, by the way, would have been out much sooner, but because of the all the delays because of COVID and everything else, it then ended up coming out in just early December, right? But it probably would have been out earlier in the fall if they had been able to
oh,
just
right, release it into theaters. Right.
yeah, in
I mean, it
theaters.
was released into some theaters. I even saw some people posting that they'd seen it elsewhere in the country where their theaters were open. And it was supposed to be here in New York too,
I
but
would have much preferred seeing it on the movie theater,
because it's gorgeous.
especially this
So
one.
if it were bigger, right, right.
I mean, I have a big TV now, but which I had to do because I didn't know how long it would be until we got back into the movie theaters. And even if we're ready to go back to the movie theaters, they may not be movie theaters to walk into.
Don't
So,
say that. Oh, wow. I hope that's not
well, I
right.
believe in being realistic.
Yeah.
I think it's the first step to kind of rectify problems is just taking them on, the reality of it. I was actually texting with this film producer, indie film producer named Matt Miller, who will be on YouTube this show, and he was thinking that, and I said, I had already figured that when many of the multiplexes will be shutting, they just this is just taking an enormous financial
I know.
toll on them. And I thought, well, it's more likely sometime down in the next years, you'll start seeing independent film theaters opening up again, storefront movie theaters again, because there will be people who want to go take their lovely wife, to a movie, or their husband to a movie. And, you know, it's a viable business. You have a downtown, you it's you open up a small movie theater, 100 seats, 110 seats. We could go back to the age of the single screen little theaters. Um
Well, one of
and
the
they're going to look
interesting
pretty good. They're going to
it
look
was
good too.
it's interesting in that 1947 decision that made the theaters and the movie company, the companies that own both
The
theaters
studios
and the
owned all the
studios
movie
divest
chains. Each
themselves. Right,
right, each studio had their own movie chain. So
right.
the government stepped in and said, you know, no more.
You can't be linked in, vertically integrated like that. But now Netflix bought the Paris Theater in Manhattan. So in a way, we're going back there, but it's such an ailing
Well,
industry at this point that I think it will be allowed.
Netflix. Well, people should know that are watching that in order to be considered uh, nominations, Oscar nominated, to be considered for Oscar nominations, that you have to have a week-long theatrical. Now, this no longer
Right.
applies, or is at least for the moment. But historically, film would have to have a week-long theatrical engagement which means in a theater, for a week in New York and in Los Angeles, and then they would qualify for nomination. So, as a step to qualify their films, Netflix bought a movie theater to just ensure that they'd always have a regular movie theater that they could. We're doing it down at the IC Center. Now they've got the Paris. So that's why I don't think it's the same. It's a different whole strategy. It's not,
Yeah.
a chain of theaters around the country where, where they're monopolizing and they're only allowing their movies into these theaters. It's like
Oh, it's
anyway.
totally different. I mean, because
Yeah.
the studios had they turned out a movie a week, so they were turning them out to fill their theaters and force them on the theaters, whether the theater people wanted them or not. It's very different.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was a thoroughly watchable movie, and if you're a Hollywood, I mean, if this is your interest, you're going to enjoy it because there's so many little, things that you'll get that many people would not. I have, not to the detriment of the producers of the film, but I have a hard time figuring out if this will be appealing to the mainstream, to those who are not interested in old Hollywood, not interested in that type of story. I don't know that it's going to appeal to them. I don't see it. I don't see this film as being broadly popular. But
I don't know.
doesn't mean it
I've
won't win
wondered the same
awards.
thing. I mean, I'm so close to
I
it.
mean, right. It's hard for you to sort of
Right.
have a clear sort of perspective, but I mean, I root for a movie like that because it's such an homage and such a shows such respect and love of cinema. um the other thing I want to talk about is the whole this thing we were talking about yesterday informally about trying to stir up things that really aren't controversial anymore. Nobody in the world outside of our little community of Wells versus Mankiewicz enthusiasts know that there is a controversy around the screenplay, and the credit. I mean, and like we said, my dear friend Uncle Joe McBride, and he wrote this tirade about how the film is cheating, giving Mankiewicz too much credit makes Wells look bad. I mean, it's just silly.
Well, it's been so interesting because I read these pieces and I read Twitter about it because I'm really interested in it, obviously. And when I see people complaining, they didn't give Wells enough time or he just comes in and goes out. It's all the flashbacks in this movie are sort of they're triggered by Herman's conversation. They're Herman's point of view,
POV.
as opposed to in Citizen Kane when you're supposed to be going into the narrative of each of the people that the reporter visits. So it's Herman's point of view, and it's not I've begun writing the acronym WWCK, who wrote Citizen Kane, to sort of encompass this
That's a hashtag.
controversy. Yeah, right. Well, only for me, my own private hashtag. It's not about who wrote Citizen Kane. It's about Herman. It's a character portrait of a man, just like Citizen Kane is, but it's Herman. And the present of the movie is when he accidentally fell into this job of writing the first draft of a screenplay for this neophyte who hadn't written any screenplays. That it became the iconic movie that it is all about Orson Welles. Nobody would say differently. And so all the controversy about how many words that of Herman's first draft, which surprisingly is many. When I was doing the research and I took the trouble to read the American, which is the 320 or 325 page first draft, I was startled by how much I recognized from the movie. So it is there, and the structure is there, and the structure led to the structure was the first thing they came up with, not Hearst. I've also read a lot of accounts that are saying Orson Welles came to town to do a movie about Hearst. No, he came to town to do a movie, and his first choice was Conrad's Heart of Darkness. And he wanted to do that with the, is it point of view, where the camera would be whatever the guy's name, I can't remember the character in Heart of Darkness, but going into the jungle, and it would be what he would see. And it was a brilliant idea that came in way over budget when they estimated the cost. So then he had to find something else to write about. And that's when, visiting Herman in his, cast, they came up with this idea of a character portrait, and eventually with Hearst, who Herman knew a lot about. But it's Orson Welles' movie, and I, Herman's biographer, would never say anything less. So yeah, I think it's a whole lot of arguing about
Right.
something.
Well,
On the other
I think
hand,
David,
let me just say one thing. I was very nervous about how Herman and his brother Joe and his wife Sarah would be portrayed, because yes, it's a biopic. They get to be as fictional as they want. But I still hoped that the impression of Herman would be the way I thought of Herman. So I understand the people very invested in Wells wanting their hero to be up there. But there are heroes everywhere. You
right.
see them in movies, you see them
Yeah,
in interviews.
right. If
He's had
anything, I mean, Orson Welles' legacy in the last, I'd say, especially 5 to 10 years, has been almost completely restored.
I didn't know it was
I do.
not.
I believe with The Other Side of the Wind, even though it was, not a lot of people saw it or loved it. A lot of people did love it. A lot of people didn't love it. But the point, I think, is there's been a lot of correction being made. He had this reputation, which was largely was kind of a conspiracy of studios and film producers who blamed him for a lot, and didn't give him as much credit for all of the incredible amount that he accomplished in his life. The young man from Kenosha, the kid
Right.
from Kenosha, who by the reason he made Citizen Kane, and as you already mentioned, is that he had carte blanche to make anything he wanted. Apparently, I guess in practice it wasn't the case, because he wanted to do Heart of Darkness.
What was the budget?
And
He had to be in under budget, first of all.
he had a particular budget, but with that budget he could make anything he wanted with that budget, and then he would have complete freedom, right?
Yeah.
What?
Artistic control.
Artistic control. And because of what he accomplished on stage and radio already. And so the term wonderkind really did apply to him. And there was, with that, there was also a lot of resentment, because here was this kid in his 20s who had this carte blanche, barely. I mean, he was a kid, and able to make whatever he wanted with a Hollywood budget. And, all these directors and, had producers and everybody on their backs all the time, never got any kind of freedom like that, so they're like, so he was, well,
it's not just that they didn't get the freedom, it's that they got salaries like they couldn't get anywhere else except in the movie business. So while they were always champing at the bit and in great pain that they especially like with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, where they kept replacing them and doing teams and everything, but that's the nature of the studio system. So that was golden handcuffs. They made peace with that. And here's a guy who comes in and doesn't have to have those. And it's very, very painful to see.
Having read that Cary Grant book, he was also figured out early on from a few other of his colleagues that he should be freelance.
Yes, but most people couldn't do that.
Independent.
I mean, they weren't Cary Grant.
Right.
Yeah.
So he was so powerful that he actually was able to get away with not being a contract player.
Yes.
Which was very unusual. The only handful of people were able to do that, which of course, ended up turning ultimately the power over to actors and away from the studios.
Well, I don't think that's because the actors were so powerful. I think it's forces outside of the movie business, television, et cetera. And the divestment, not having the theater income plus television and other things
Well, I'm
competing.
not talking about the end of the studio system more than just the power play.
Right, but I mean,
For sure,
he had
television
the
and
power
and
during their. Cary Grant was able to do it even during the powerful period of the studios, and then later
yeah.
on,
But it was
nobody had the
it
power. Yeah.
right, only a handful. But I was saying is that ultimately more and more figured out that this was the only way to, get out from under the thumb of is to figure out how, right, is not to be a contract. Although some actors liked it.
Well, not only that, I mean, it was a paycheck, and most of them. How
Right.
many Cary Grants are there? That
That's
if you
right. There's
went
only
out
room
on
for a
your
few.
own, and the females who aren't going to get cast after they're a certain age, it was a struggle. Betty Davis got herself out from under Warner's finally, and then was languishing till All About Eve, and she was about 41, I think, something like that. So again, the good thing about a studio was you had a paycheck, even though it was kind of slavery in a lot of ways.
Right, and you could be farmed out
Yeah,
anytime, lent to another studio, and they would be making a lot of money off of your being lent, and you
right.
didn't. Yeah. Anyway, the name of the book again is The Brothers Mankiewicz. You still can purchase this in time for the holidays, ladies and gentlemen. What a great gift! And then watch Mank, or you could. This is not going to give away anything. You can watch the movie first and then read the book, or you can read the book and then see the movie. It doesn't really make a difference. Or you can do it simultaneously. While you're watching the movie, you could be reading the book.
Oh, well, I mean, if I could say one thing about Mank, I was fascinated by the degree to which they seem to want to seek authenticity. A lot of it is accurate, and even with the fictional elements, it seemed to me each time something was fictional, I could see why they used it to further what I thought of as the emotional truth of the characters. And I don't know
Interesting. Do you have an example
why.
of that?
Um, well, yes. Okay, so the subplot, that's the major fiction, right? The Upton Sinclair gubernatorial
Oh,
race
right. The
of
author of The
fake news.
Jungle.
Yeah, right. So he ran for governor in 1934, and Metro Goldwyn Mayer produced these fake news ads that deterred a lot of people from voting for him. Apparently, that
And
is true.
Mankiewicz, Herman was a big advocate for
Not
Upton Sinclair.
necessarily. No,
No?
not necessarily. No, and the and the
Well, I
and
thought
the
he bet his fortune on it, but him
no.
winning. But
Well, he might have been in the movie. Yes, in the movie he triggers that, and that
oh, okay.
anger. I don't want to do too much of a spoiler, but that provided the motive in the movie for him to want to do this movie about Hearst. That was not the
Right.
real motive in real life. He'd always wanted to do something about Hearst. Hearst fascinated him. And I think that,
Sinclair
well,
was our Sinclair, just even though he was running for governor, not for president, he was our Bernie, right? He was like the Bernie.
yeah, well, yeah, he was a socialist and he was a muckraker. And Herman admired him, but whether or not I don't know whether he would have voted for him.
Okay.
It was all over the place. But my point is to give him a more within the movie motive. They used this subplot, and what I liked about it was that it was a political subplot, and Herman was a historical and political expert. Those were his passions. So I loved it that although it was a personal story, again, I don't want to do too many spoilers, but within a political subplot, that was very true to Herman's nature, and I liked that. And there were other smaller details that would be meaningless, but like all the people they put in the writers' room together, Hecht and Charles MacArthur and George S. Kaufman, they would not have been in that writers' room together at that point. Sid Perlman, although they did all write for the movies, and they certainly Kaufman didn't work for Herman the way they set it up in there. But that was just a kind of a fun movie lovers scene to have all those people.
Sure, of course. Right. It's almost like the seeing maybe the round table, the
Algonquin. So
the
it was
Algonquin
they were
round
all
table.
Herman's friends, but that was a kind of a fake narrative, but it wasn't that far off. and it was fun. And the spitballing session where they went into Selznick and were doing that, that is actually how they would often do that. But they wouldn't have had that kind of disrespect for Selznick that they would have for many producers. I think they used Selznick because a lot of people know him, and he's got a very um, well-known image. So, you know, they could use him, but they wouldn't have done it that way with him. But they would have done it that way with other producers. So that's the kind of thing I mean. It was authentic and fictional at the same time, in a fun way to me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. I was going to give it a little time and watch it again soon. You know,
Well,
watch it
pretty soon
again.
I can recite it for you if I watch it enough.
Yeah, right. You have
I
to
can
start
perform.
with the other half and then
Right.
start
First, I'll
there
learn
and
all
then
the women's roles, and then I'll move on to the men. Oh, you could do the
yeah,
men, sort of act it out.
sure, yes. Um, it's been a great just opportunity to be introduced to these guys. I feel like I also have a greater understanding of the Mankiewiczes. And one of my favorite thing was we when you were about to do the 92nd Street Y event, which probably is still available for free. Is it free now?
I don't
Is
know,
it, or you
but
still
I
have to
think
pay
you
for
can
it? Maybe
find it.
you probably have to pay for it on the
You
night.
might have
Yeah,
to pay. I think it was
you have to Google it.
$15, but it's on the 92nd Street Y site. I think in their archives or something. Yeah, Ileana,
Yeah, I think you could
Alex, and I.
if you Google 92nd Street. But Ileana did the moderating of that, and then you know, we did a podcast together, and you know, these things led me to a great. And then she, of course, knew Joe towards the end of his life. She had at least one encounter with him, if not a few, and you know, so it's been a great opportunity, and to yeah, I don't know what else to say. I just I'm very
That one was
grateful
fun
for it.
because Ileana was in California and I was in New York and Alex was in Australia when we did that one.
Right.
So that was
Yeah, that was
a
took a
miracle
little
of
coordinating.
modern internet, right?
That's for sure. Right. The new virtual reality that we all are living in. What will we do? What will life be like after next summer?
What would
That's
life
the
be like
question.
now without it? It's just hard to imagine.
I've spent some time thinking about that too, and feel very, very lucky that we have all these options available to us, you know, and that we're already available before this.
Right.
We have to wait while people figure it out.
Well, you already knew it. Yeah, you were experienced at it already.
Just barely. Just barely. Early on, I didn't know what Zoom was. It took me a couple of, and then I started doing some Zooms, and I hadn't thought, oh, let's use the video. I just thought I'll just take the audio from it, you know. And it took me a couple of weeks or a few weeks to start to say, oh, well, the video is good. I'll start putting these videos up, and then realizing this is actually kind of a nice way to expand, you know, ways to communicate and connect with audience, you know, that are interested in what I'm doing. So yeah. Well, I look forward to your next book, and you know, hope that we'll see it sometime soon.
I don't want to take as long as I took on the Brothers Mankiewicz on my next book. That
Well, now you
took
have
way too
two
long.
people. Well, now you have two people that are kind of you know, going to bug you about that. So
Okay, that's
so
good.
easy to get rid of it. Yeah,
Nagging is good. Yeah,
or helping and nag is such a fine line.
right. If I'm doing
This is
it,
also
I'm helping.
available.
Right.
This is also an audio book. Very good. It's an audio book as well, and available through Penguin Random House, and or you can get
Yes.
a of course a Kindle version. So there's no reason not to read this or buy it for somebody.
Yes, and actually, a couple of people have said that they wanted signed copies, and while I can't do that, if you write me on my website, sydneylstern.com, I have postcards. You might even have one, Adam.
I
That
have two.
Yeah, okay. So they look just like this, and I'll write you a note and mail it to you in an envelope, and then you can stick it in your book and have a bookmark and an inscribed book all at the same time. So yes, the publisher did those. Aren't they nice?
They are nice. I'm sticking them in the book. The book was in the bookcase, and I meant to plug it, but my son has co-opted the library. He's living in the library.
Oh, yeah. Well,
well, it's been fun.
this was fun. I know.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.